There are lots of different ways to go about it, and there are lots of reasons to do it. But if you find yourself out of work, laid off, maybe you've been injured, somebody made you redundant, and your old skills just gone by the wayside, recycling in one of its forms, reselling in many of its forms, could be a new start. Yeah, so I ended up with another first on the editing side last night. I sat down to make an intro to the Seebeck video when Rose and I went out to the area where we used to live. And by the time I was done, it was long. 33 minutes, I think, before I even noticed it. And it kept going because I needed to finish the topic. I had it in the timeline that, really what I've got here are 3 different topics for 3 different videos, none of which was actually the Seebeck video, so that was uploaded into the timeline, but I didn't even start editing it. But I had 3 different topics, so I split them. I actually had to figure out how to extract sections of the video to make their own clips. Went out to YouTube and I rewatched part of a video I had seen when I was first learning about DaVinci, because I remembered there was a section in there that said exactly how to do that. And at the time I blew past that thinking, that doesn't really apply to me. But in the back of my mind, I remembered it. So I searched, found it, and then watched that section. And it actually was only a few settings to separate those clips. So they've now been turned into three different videos. One about sending offers and shipping, that was one. One about solo selling and being able to deal with a continued ongoing topic of dealing with burnout and stress. The third being, what was the third? Yeah, I'm already beginning to lose it. You'll see those. I'll do the first one to wrap up the burnout and stress. Then I'll cut the Seebeck one, and then I'll go back to the other 2 that ended up being made as byproducts of turning on the camera. In effect, I will have produced 3 videos from one session. So it's an interesting way to batch videos. A little more confusing on the editing side, because I kept going, from topic 1 and I jump over to topic 2. So in the editing process, you have to pull the parts of topic 1 together from the length of the video. And then I just set them all to render as I went to bed last night. Yeah, cut flowers are one of the things Brandy's farm does this time of year. I don't know if these came from Brandy or not, but when she's making up bouquets, she often drops fresh flowers off for her mother. And this is commonly out here on the table under the gazebo is where they often get enjoyed. In addition to vegetables, they sell cut flowers at their roadside stand. And then she also takes the bouquets or vases in with her to the farm sale, and she can sell them directly. So it's another one of her side hustles. Some days I feel like this old worn out hat. This is Brian. That's one of my favorite hats, but you can tell it's been overused and gone through the ringer over the years. A lot of the vented hats that I wear, they only seem to come in black. So there you are out in the sun when you need that vented hat the most, and it's just absorbing. Oh, I got a lot of geese taking off here. Let's see if I can catch them. In the summer, I like to wear a vented hat, and all too many of the companies produce them in black, which seems to be the worst color. It absorbs too much heat. So whenever I could find a light colored hat, I'd pick it up. Some days I just feel like that old hat. I was wearing that yesterday when I started working on the retaining wall. So it's out here to kind of let the breeze dry it off. Not getting too far on that retaining wall. The ground is like concrete. It's got stones and rocks and aggregate, and it's all mixed in. Boy, those young geese are just having a ball. But it sometimes feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And on bad days, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I feel that way to some extent about both reselling lately and starting this new channel. About the time I think I've got something like editing beginning to get the basics down. I record something, next thing you know, I've got the audio out of sync from the video and I'm having to try to redo it and resync it, and it just consumes a lot of time. Yesterday was like that. I was tired from working on the retaining wall, and then I started to talk about obsolescence, people and systems, training, recycling, the ability to make repairs, the difference between pickers and gleaners. And when I finished with the editing and I went to render, I thought I had a pretty good 10, 12-minute video ready to go. Well, I played it again this morning. The audio is all out of sync with it. There's a patch in the corner of that gazebo, and it happened during a storm, the hole that needed to be patched. I came out the next morning with a cup of coffee, sat down on my chair, and I noticed a stick, just kind of out in midair. It was about 2 inches in diameter, maybe 3, about 6, 7 feet long. And it was just kind of hanging there. And as I followed my eyes back, realized it actually had popped right through the roof of this metal roof gazebo, and then gravity had brought it to horizontal. Well, luckily I had some similar brown metal in my scrap pile and was able to get up there and put a patch on the top, a patch on the bottom, because it punched a pretty good hole through there. I love these metal roofs, but they are susceptible to damage, especially when you live among the trees. But that got me thinking about the ability to repair things. Often when we go out to estate sales, auctions, garage sales, or you're doing clear outs, you come across things that are old, they're worn, they're obsolete, they may be incomplete, but they still have some value. You might be able to upcycle them, or at least recycle them. You might be able to dismantle them and take some of the parts. This morning we sold such a part. It wasn't old or obsolete, but it was an auction lot Rose picked up, one of those fancy new coffee pots that, it grinds the beans and then makes the coffee and puts it in your cup. I'm surprised it doesn't drink it. But it didn't work. When it came in probably on one of those return pallet buys that the auction houses make. And it came in, she paid 20 something for it, wanted to try it out, and it was dead on arrival. She was going to call the auctioneer and tell him, hey, you guaranteed these to be new and functional, and it isn't. But I said, before you do that, you should certainly mention it to him that it wasn't working, because he's getting into this in a big way, selling those pallet items, and he should know that they're not all pristine and ready to go. I said, check its value. It's so new and so modern. I bet you, as expensive as it is new, I suspect the parts probably have some value. So we did, we checked it, and I confirmed it. And then we took 20 minutes or so and we dismantled it and kept all the pieces that were likely to be needed by a homeowner in case something failed. Now here's the part that sold today. It's a replacement glass carafe and spoon for that Cuisinart coffee maker. Here are the parts we sold earlier. This one's a bean hopper, a filter basket, and you can see that what the prices achieved on those are, and that's plus shipping. And if we go over here, these are the parts we still have to sell. One at the top here is a channel cover. Then you've got a water reservoir cover, a filter, and there's a filter basket door. And you can see the price we're trying to get on these. So collectively, we took 7 sellable parts off of that modern coffee maker grinder unit that failed to turn on and work properly when it arrived. So that's another way you can go about harvesting parts, salvaging parts, and running a side hustle, selling off parts that people might use. Carafes are broken, covers are broken, filters get worn out. So people, to avoid having to replace these coffee makers, because they are expensive, will go ahead and check out sites like eBay. And if a replacement part keeps their unit alive, you've sold something. You've done something useful. You've kept that coffee maker out of the landfill. There's no way the auction company would have really done anything with it. If we'd have returned it, they'd have probably just tossed it in the closest dumpster. Now, this is just one example. I do this for industrial and commercial parts as well. As a maintenance guy in my previous career before I retired, I've always found the value in repair parts, whether they be new old stock, harvested, or used in good condition, whatever their status might be. Sometimes they can keep an extremely expensive piece of equipment functional for another few years or a decade. But taking items apart is a good skill. In fact, you can build a whole business on that. Some of them are going to be long tail. Some of them may never sell. I often end up with, a flurry of activity when the listings first go up, and then it trickles down. And a year or so later, there might be one or two parts. And why do you need skills? Well, you never know when your skill set that you learn, depending on whatever age you are in life, may become obsolete. I was taught to use a typewriter in high school. Well, there aren't many typewriters left around, so there certainly aren't many typewriter repairmen. Same way with watch repairmen, cobblers. There are lots of skill sets where people stopped repairing things, but often those skills could be transferred. A guy who can repair watches and all the small finicky parts probably could be retrained to repair modern machinery, maybe cell phones, because his mindset is already tuned to taking care of small detail. He might be a good lister for reselling because he's used to looking at fine details and putting in all the item specifics and things. That takes someone who pays attention to detail. And that, of course, brought me around to the idea of upcycling and recycling. Some people just go after scrap. When something's old and broken and, it's made out of metal or copper, especially silver, they recycle it. From time to time, I sell scrap weight silver, especially back when we used to clear a lot of storage units. We'd find a lot of obsolete, old designed jewelry. And if it happened to be silver, 925, and we didn't think it had enough value or enough current marketing to put it up on its own, we would just simply collect that stuff in a Ziploc. And same way with 14K, 10K gold, broken chains, obsolete designs. We would simply collect them and then put them on a scale, weigh them, and sell them as so much melt weight or scrap weight. Some people do that. That's their model. Others, they sell scrap metal to the local recycling yard. So anything that's broken and it's made out of metal, they've got a bin for it. They like wire, they like copper, they like brass parts, and batteries. When we left Seebeck, I had several deep cycle marine batteries, and rather than worry about how long they'd been since they'd been used, I simply took them all and gave them to a scrapper. He turned them in for about $6 to $10 a piece, depending on their size. Not a lot of money, but when you're looking to retrain yourself and get into the biz, scrapping can do it. And you can also mix those up. You can start to take something apart, save the pieces that can be listed on eBay, and then scrap the rest. And that way you're not building and keeping your shelves full of things that won't sell. And of course, you can't go into this discussion without getting around to American Picker. Those guys, coupled with the Storage Wars people, those two TV shows, I think they taught a whole generation of people what the word pickers means. And of course, pickers are those people who run around selecting items to resell. They try to be honkers, young honkers. So, pickers are running around trying to be selective and find either rusty gold, as they used to say, or just things that might be collectible. Another group. This is going to make for a very hard video to edit. And I've got an airplane overhead. So we're talking about 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The distractions going around me as I record. certainly fall into that category. I am supposed to be able to zoom this. So there's a group over here, and then there's another group over here. And they're all making noise today as they learn to fly. So yeah, those guys are pickers. Though I can't believe that they convinced anyone, either show, that the few good things they were finding at each stop was paying them a wage that they could live on. You know, that would cover the hotels and the meals, the cost of operating a vehicle and running a business, paying a salary. That wasn't likely to happen. I think the production company was picking up the tab for much of that. But that leads me to gleaners. You got pickers, you got gleaners. Gleaners are the guys who come in after and still see value in what's left. If you've ever gone to an estate sale or garage sale and talked to somebody and their prices just seem a little high, maybe you're a book buyer, and usually they discount on Sundays. But even the discounted price on Sunday isn't going to make a deal for you that's worth picking up the volume you need. So you tell them, you come down to this price, or give me one price for the whole room, and I'll come in and glean that for you. I'll take it all away and I'll do the sorting back at my place. So those are gleaners. I think the term originated with fruit pickers. You know, the pickers come in, they harvest the tree, but as always, there's some fruit that isn't ripe on harvest day, and then later you've got windfalls, a fruit that's made it to the ground. And the gleaners come in and they see the value left, and they repick that, or they pick up that fruit that's fallen out of the lawn or the grass, and they do something with it. It may be a little bruised, they may have to trim it, they may have to cut it. It might take twice as many apples to make a pie, but they can still make a pie. So those are gleaners. So most of my 27 years, I would probably have to say I've been a combination of the two, a hybrid. I like to go in and pick, but often that's not the deal people need. You know, you go in there and you just say, well, I want only the shiny, well-maintained tools. And you're going to have to pay a premium for those. But if you go in and you say, all right, I'll clear it wall to wall, I'll take it all. That was my motto for many years, as I cleared workshops, barns, garages, sometimes small retail places. But it was I'll take it all, wall to wall. And that's a lot more work. Now your ROI per piece is very low, but when you're hauling off everything, you know, the workbenches, the storage cabinets, the shelving, and the material on those, you're making many trips, multiple trips, and you've got to have a place large enough to process that. And it's the same way when you go clear storage units. If you go out to a delinquent storage unit auction or online, and you bid and you buy and you win, that facility expects you to empty it, what they call broom swept, wall to wall, take it all. You own the good, you own the broken, you own the bad. And when we used to do that work, we would start sorting it right from minute one. You know, some things were only suitable for donation. Some things went into the truck immediately because they had high value, and they were going to go up on eBay or go to an auction house that specialized in gold jewelry and coins, firearms, that type of thing. So those were immediately put to the front of the line to recoup some of that principal, because recouping your principal is important as well. You can survive by waiting for the last 10% of the items to sell, long tail, but you got to get your principal back, otherwise you can't take advantage of that next deal. And it's been my experience that when you do work like clearing estates or storage units or gleaning, you'll make about 80%, maybe more of your money from about 20% of the product. And the bottom 20% of that product, you're going to end up donating it, you're going to end up scrapping it, you're going to end up passing it over to someone who is a welder perhaps and can turn horseshoes into coat hooks, or who can take those busted up old relics and turn them into something new. I used to clear barn boards sometimes, like the old painted fence boards and painted barn boards. And I had a deal worked out where I would take a truckload of them when they were available to me for hauling, and I would drive them over to a lady who was also a gleaner, and she would turn those into garden projects. She'd make potting benches. She'd make Adirondack chairs. She'd make art to be hung out on the fences. And then she would turn the finished products back to me, and I would take them into the auction with me or sell them out of my warehouse in Seebeck, out of my yellow pole barn. She was getting paid for her time. Company was getting paid for their time. And it was all being new items being produced from old items. And if I could give her old shelf brackets or maybe old single pane glass frames for window panes, she would incorporate some of that right into those potting benches, and she would make them look very nice, rustic and nice, the old rustic chic or country farmhouse style. We did that for many years. Some days she'd be turning out birdhouses. Some days she'd be turning out benches to sit on, Adirondack chairs, potting benches. If she could imagine it or she saw it somewhere, she would reproduce it, and then we could sell it, because she didn't have the retail places to put it up. She didn't want to go open a booth. She didn't want to go sit at a swap meet. She wanted to spend her time creating. And she was also hooked in with some banks, because it was a time of home repossession. And to flip that property, the banks would need people to come in and clear out what was left when the homeowners defaulted on their loans or their houses were repossessed. So she would go in and she would look around, and there was always seemed to be stuff left out in the garden that she could clean up and resell. Or she could, sometimes she got great stuff right out of the house, but it wasn't a lot of volume. A lot of it was just trash. But she would upcycle what she could, and I'd go over there every couple months. She'd call, I'd respond, and I'd go see what she had. And I'd get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It might be old hardware, might be something she found in a yard, like a gazing ball, because often when people move out, especially in a hurry, they neglect those things that are outside in their yard. They just can't take them with them. Extension ladders, wheelbarrows, garden tools, they tend to get left. If you've got a vehicle that can haul them, those items can all be resold. If you've got a big general auction house in your area that just lays that stuff all out in the yard outside and sells it off by the piece of the lot. So, yeah, pickers, gleaners, upcycling, recycling, becoming retrained, because your skill sets, they can become obsolete. You can lose your job overnight. The English call it being made redundant, your layoffs. Could also simply be that whatever you did is no longer needed in the volume that society once relied on it. I mean, I've taken my daughters to, from Japan to Korea to have a cobbler make them shoes, because what we needed wasn't available in the local Japanese shops. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a shoe repair person in the small town I live in right now, because people just say, well, I'll replace it. It wears out. It's not worth the time to pay the labor to have new soles put on a pair of boots. I remember when my daughters were teenagers, and it was a common joke, I've got boots older than you, kid, because we used to have them resoled and repaired. It's the same way if you're a car mechanic. There's a guy that I watch on YouTube, and what he does is he takes running cars that are aging, and the owners can't get enough out of them in a turn-in, a trade-in. Often there's something wrong with them. Maybe the rear end's been hit, but the engine runs fine, that type of thing. So he buys these, and if he's particular about the model he buys, he parts them out. He brings them home on a flatbed trailer, does the work right there on a flatbed trailer, sells off all the computer modules and the airbags, and he sells off the control units. Sometimes he sells the rims and the tires if they have value. He can sell mirrors, door panels. The list is endless, because cars are complicated things that are made up of thousands of parts. The trick is to pick the models that have enough value so that the aggregate of the parts removed pays you a wage and a profit for the work done. And then, since it's on the trailer, he just takes the whole hulk to a recycling yard that handles vehicles. And then he gets a little bit back from that as well. You know, they crush the car, turn it into new cars. There are lots of different ways to go about it, and there are lots of reasons to do it. But if you find yourself out of work, laid off, maybe you've been injured, somebody made you redundant, and your old skills just gone by the wayside, recycling in one of its forms, reselling in many of its forms, could be a new start. You've learned a lot. Maybe you've just simply aged out of whatever your industry was. I mean, look at those poor $1 million ball players with they get the bonuses. You know, by the time they're in their 30s, they're has-beens, and of course, some of them are never wases. But yeah, they've got to find something new to do, especially if they weren't getting those $1 million bonuses, or they blew through them because they thought their future was gold. And a lot of people do that. They go to college, they incur debt. The next thing you know, they're out of college and they're looking for work, but their field has moved on. I was talking about this to the cable guy the other day, about how the last house Rose and I built, which was the one in Seebeck that looked like a horse barn, I had just finished installing, you know, cable to every room, distribution for TVs, distribution, you know, the internet. And the next thing you know, Bluetooth and Wi-Fi have hit the world big time. And when we finished the house and brought in the electronics, none of them needed to connect to that cable. So it was all in the walls. It was a whole distribution system, but it had become obsolete before it was even put into service. So now you just brought it into a box, the box connected wirelessly, and all your devices. You could sit on the porch like I am right now. You could sit in the living room. You didn't have to physically connect them anymore. Well, that's a whole industry that had to move on. Obsolete equipment, obsolete parts, obsolete people, obsolete training. And the lucky people were able to take the non-specific skills they learned. It might be the installation skill. It might be the reading a tech manual and doing service call skill. It might be customer interface skill. So a guy who can sell cable boxes can also sell high-end entertainment. He can sell electronics. He can sell cars. He can sell on the internet. Migrating your skills. You know, just because people tell you you're obsolete doesn't make you obsolete. Nor does being old make you old. You know, I tell Rose, I said, you know, people talk about grumpy old men. I said, none of us are born grumpy old men. Life makes us grumpy old men. You know, so try not to be so grumpy as you age. Though it's hard some days. You know, you wake up a little stiff, a little sore, moving around those big blocks. Yeah, so my original plan, even though it's pretty tight getting between the green building over there and the house, my plan was to bring in the Kubota, turn the backhoe end of it over this way, strap a safety line onto the old log stump, and dig the bank cut all along here with the backhoe. But before the chipping and cleaning up of the brush was even done, Rose has already planted some additional trees and flowers and bushes. But you can see here that, what have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4 at the base, then 3, 2, and 1. So that's how far I've gotten, how far I've got to go. After chipping a trench in the ground, and I look back at the progress I made yesterday, and I think I laid, let's see, it's a pyramid kind of stack as you work down the wall, so it'd be like 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever that adds up to. That's how far I've got so far. And I got a lot of wall left to go, so I think I'll be doing that about every other day or every third day for the next month to get that done. After chipping, helping me chip and move dirt the last couple of days, she's like, I think your idea would have worked. This is hard. This is harder than I thought. So sometimes putting the effort into the planning can save you the backbreaking work of doing it by hand. All right, I don't know how long this is going on, but yeah, maybe I'll edit this one quickly and use it to replace the one with the unsynced audio. It's distracting to have the mouth moving and the words coming out at the wrong time. Maybe I'll recode that one as just being a podcast so people can listen to it.